saith the words of the spirits of our honorable ancestors and our ancestral gods to you all, my people. What have you done? What are you doing? Because the blood of your innocent children are crying out of the earth to us while you are standing in the way of us meeting out judgment, true justice, and retribution to their murderers, wicked seeds, their heirs and successors. So hear this. Oh yeah, now. All right. You should never accept the system's blood money as compensation for the killing of your children. Oh no, don't do it. You must never accept the system's blood money as compensation for the slaughter of your sons and daughters. Oh no, no, you must never accept the system's hush money as compensation for the murder of your loved ones. Oh no. For if you accept the system's blood money, you will become an accomplice to the devil's sacrifice. For if you accept the system's blood money, you will have compromised your spiritual birthright for ancestral justice. For if you accept the system's blood money, you will have become one with force, and the force is of evil. So put the case in the hands of our honorable ancestors, and let the killers and their systems of force perish with their blood money. You should never accept the system's blood money as compensation for the killing of your elders. Oh no, don't do it. You must never claim or accept the system's blood money as compensation for their so-called reparations. For the chattel slavery, murders, oppression and abuse of our honorable ancestors. Oh no. For if you accept the system's blood money, you will stand in the way of our source through spiritual justice upon them. For if you accept the system's blood money, you will stand in the way of our source through spiritual judgment upon them, condemning the evildoers. For if you accept the system's blood money, you will stand in the way of our source through spiritual revenge. So put the case in the hands of our honorable ancestors, and let the killers and their systems of force perish with their blood money. Please don't play to the hands of the system's force for their blood money. Oh no, don't do it. When they pay out their blood money, they are deflecting their curse and retribution to you and your family. Oh yeah, cause the system's blood money, let me tell you, it won't make your lives any much better. And here's one reason why. A good portion of it will be going right back to the system. Oh yes, to the system's lawyers. And what little remains will only bring your heartaches, guilt, miseries upon your head, coals of fire. Away the pain or replace, oh yeah, the lost of a murdered loved one. For if you accept the system's money, you will stand in the way of our source through spiritual justice. For if you accept the system's blood money, you will stand in the way of our source through spiritual judgment upon them. For if you accept years and successes the system's blood money, you will stand in the way of our source through spiritual revenge. So put the case in the hands of our honorable ancestors, and let the killers and their systems of force perish with their blood money. Now parents, I want you to hear and take heed to this. Your children's lives are not your lottery ticket for winning the system's blood money. Your loved ones' lives are not for you to directly or indirectly sacrifice for the system's blood money. So be not deceived, for just like a fountain cannot bring forth fresh water and salt water at the same time, there's no good that can come from the system's evil. Don't stand in the way of our ancestors' administration of spiritual justice and retribution on our enemies and their wicked seeds. And above all, you must never forgive, bless, and forget the predators, murderers, and oppressors of your people. I am the Mystic Philosopher.
With your host, Brother Cujo. It's the LanceScurv Show, but it's really the Brother Cujo Show. With our guests, and not only our guests, our family is here. Let's not use the word guest anymore. That's a temporary, business-like, type of vibe that doesn't show the continuity and connection that we have with each other, because we live in a very much electric system. Electricity goes everywhere when you can't see it. When you're around other people who resonate with you, and they have a certain spirit, they have a certain feel to them, they are connected to you. And we average each other up or down. So we have to make sure that we keep people around us that have good spirits, have good positive vibes, because that helps to keep us up. It helps to undergird us. Like that spider in the spider web that can sense every little movement in its web. He doesn't have to go out and get the food. He spreads out the web and just chill. And while you struggle to get out of the web, he crawls slowly because he knows he has you. Well, between all the people when you're in a crowd or a club or a supermarket or in the street or at home or in a so-called church, there's an unseen web connecting all of us. And we feel what's going on around us even when we don't consciously understand that. And here is our brother who understands that, and he brings us information and knowledge above, and those of us who are here can pick up on it. If you're vibrating low, much of what he will say will go above your head. But he's a brother who puts in the work, puts in the study, and he's all about it. And I thank the ancestors and I thank the Creator for enabling us to spend time here with him today. None other than our brother, the Mystic Philosopher. Ashe, Ashe, Ashe. Welcome, my brother. And the floor, as always, whenever you tell me, is yours, because that's my duty. And it's an honor and a pleasure to be here with you. Thank you so much.
Ashe. Ashe, my brother. Ashe is the word, the source of I and I ancestors. Ashe is the source that holds all things together. Ashe is I source, I shield, and I protector. Ashe is I source, I guide, and I provider. Ashe is I source, and that is why I'm not black. Ashe is I source, I cannot be lack. Ashe is I source, I light, and I deliverer. Ashe is I source, I healer, and I teacher. Ashe is I source, I leader, and I spiritual fire. Ashe is I source, I strength. Each day I be more and more. Ashe is I source, I spiritual comforter. Each day I be more stronger. Ashe is I source, I sustainer. Each day my life is filled with more pleasure. Ashe walk with I to much green and greener pastures. Ashe walk with I beside some cold and deadly waters. Ashe walk I through the valley of blackness and under the shadow of blackness. And so I fear no evil or what the devils may do. Thank you, my brother Kojo, for your very kind and welcoming introduction as customary to your show. Ashe, Ashe, I say, to you all my fellow highly enriched melanin and highly enriched carbon skin brothers and sisters the world over, and goodwill and more to all those that may give of their time just to listen to the show. First, and on behalf of my most honorable African ancestors, please let me begin by again expressing my deepest gratitude to you, my brother Kojo, for inviting me forward to speak and share with you and your audience some more of my very thought-provoking perspectives, also known as my truth, from this your global platform, the one and only LanceScurv Show. And thanks very much to you all, the LanceScurv Show audience, listeners, even you haters and commentators, for listening and for always finding my thought-provoking perspectives and reasoning interesting enough, or possible some of you may have found them informative enough, ridiculous enough, or however your intellect may perceive and interpret them to have me forward again. But above all, I want to thank you for finding them worthy of your time and your attentive listening ear. I truly appreciate you all for thoughtfully and purposefully giving of your limited amount of time to listen to I, the Mystic Philosopher, and this, the LanceScurv Show. And just to further nice it up, I will borrow a quote from one of my back in the day favorite group called the Manhattans. In one of their songs, it said, "There is no me without you," meaning there is no me without you, the listeners. Secondly, and as is my custom and my practice before I get into my prepared notes for today's topic, for my discourse titled "The System's Blood Money," which is also under the banner of redemption from the curse of the black spell. So as it is my regular custom and practice, I will start by making a public disclaimer and clearly state that the views, the thoughts, opinions, and thought-provoking perspectives, my truth, if you will, or however you may interpret or perceive what I say and what I'm about to share with you all listeners, well-wishers, trolls, haters, and enemies of my highly enriched melanin and carbon skin people, also known as my African people. I will that you know and understand that they are not necessarily those of the host, our brother Kojo, and neither are they necessarily the views of any other member or participant on this the LanceScurv Show, nor are they in any way those of the LanceScurv Show in general, but that they are of the spirits and souls of my most honorable African ancestors, and particularly the spirits and souls of my most honorable African ancestors that were and that are the direct victims of the Black Caucasians' malevolent kidnapping and transatlantic slave trade. And they are also of the restless spirits and souls of all my innocent elders mothers, brothers, sisters, and children that have fallen victims at the vicious and merciless hands of the malevolent Caucasoid system and its agents of force and forces. And why were they and why are they victims of the system and its agents of force and forces? Well, the evidence has shown, and the evidence will no doubt continue to show, that it is because they were named, called, carded, marked, labeled, listed, profiled, and treated black. May their spirits, their souls, and energies never find rest or find peace or rest in peace until they, along with all other victims of force and spiritual champion for justice and retribution, join together and avenge their persecutors, avenge their killers and murderers, and their persecutors, killers, and murderers, descendants, and wicked seeds, and especially the wandering spirits and souls of those of my honorable African ancestors, that to the latent, bestial, and sadistic instinct, pleasure and delight of the black Caucasians were captured, yoked, shackled, and packed in the Christian missionaries' merchant ships. And some were chained and shackled, and some, while chained and shackled, were mercilessly thrown alive overboard the Christian missionaries' merchant ships and fed alive to sharks in some of the world's most vicious and shark-infested waters, whereby they were helplessly, defenselessly, torturously, and ferociously torn to pieces, while being eaten alive by sharks, and have their spirits and their souls, their precious lives, energies, violently forced, violently snuffed from their bodies. And for over 400 years they have been restlessly roaming, restlessly wandering the seas and the waters, waiting for us, the seeds of those of their African brothers and sisters that have survived the heinous journey and made it alive to the shores of the strange, evil, unjust, abominable, and unknown world of their devious conquerors, devious capturers, barbaric thieves, devious sexual predators, sexual deviants, slave traders and slave masters and slave mistresses, their heirs and successors. For over 400 years they have been restlessly roaming and wandering the seas, waiting for us, the offspring and ascendants of their African brothers and sisters that endured and survived the heinous, the horrors of chattel slavery, and preserved their highly enriched African and melanin genes, preserve their African and melanin seeds, so that today we will set the record straight, so that today we will get it right and call upon them, invoke them, honor them, pour libation for them and to them, to proclaim their names and declare them, so that here and now in this physical realm and there in the spirit realm, we will together inflict true spiritual and retributive justice on the evils. For how can I forget? How can we, my brothers and sisters, forget? Why must we forget? How must we forget? And how can we humanly, consciously, honestly, sensibly, and spiritually forgive the evils and atrocities, the extremely wicked and cruel acts that have been brought upon our people, and by extension, the evils and atrocities, the extremely wicked and cruel acts that have been brought upon us, their offspring and ascendants, by the evils. It is their spirits, it is their souls, it is their energies, the spirits, souls, and energies of those, my most honorable African ancestors, and the innocent fallen victims of the system and its agents of force and forces, that I invoke, that I call upon, and whose spirits at this time are being channeled through I, the Mystic Philosopher. Ashe, Ashe, Ashe. So please let me once again declare that in the event that any of you listeners well-wishers, trolls, haters, the evils and enemies of my people. In the event that you may hear some things, in the event that you may hear some possible new and some so-called controversial ideas, or even ideas that your intellect might not be capable of making sense of at this time, that may confound you, that may offend you, that may upset you, disturb you, or some thoughts that may disrupt or conflict with some of your most long and affectionately held beliefs. You name them. I humbly ask that you hold them, my most honorable ancestors, along with the innocent and fallen victims of the system and its agent of force and forces, and I, the Mystic Philosopher and Messenger, fully responsible, and not this, the LanceScurv Show, or my brother Kojo, who I must not in the least fail to repeat, has been more than courageous, generous, open-minded, and tolerant enough to allow me this opportunity to speak here on his, the LanceScurv Show. Thirdly, by now I'm sure most of you, and especially you loyal and regular listeners to this, the LanceScurv Show, already know who I am and for what I stand, and for what I unapologetically stand. And for those of you that might be listening to me for the first time today, I humbly ask that you please go and listen to all of my previous appearances and discourses on this, the LanceScurv Show, titled Black, the Mark of Death by Force, from part 1 to part 6, which are also under the banner of Redemption from the Curse of the Black Spell. The topic for today's discourse is, and I quote again, the system's blood money, which is under the banner of the redemption from the curse of the black spell, aka the Black Spell. Thus saith the words of the spirits of our most honorable African ancestors and our source and ancestral gods to you all, my highly enriched Melanin people, aka my African people. What have you done? What are you doing, my people? Have you all lost your minds? Have you all lost your inherent moral standards? Have you all lost your inherent moral goodness? Have you all lost your natural, native, earthly, human integrity? Have you all totally surrendered your intellect and basic common sense to your enemies, their promises, and their monies? Are you not thinking rationally and logically anymore? And can you not think rationally and logically anymore? Do you not will for true retributive justice upon all your enemies? Do you not will to see your enemies and their wicked and perverted descendants, their wicked and perverted seeds, spiritually, emotionally, psychologically, literally, physically, and otherwise suffer and pay for the evils that they and their malevolent ancestors have brought upon you and upon our Mother Earth and all of her inhabitants and your fellow earthlings? Because the souls, the energies, the blood of your innocent children, the blood of your innocent sons and daughters, the blood of your innocent infants, the blood of your innocent unborn children, the blood of your innocent elders, the blood of your innocent brothers and sisters, the blood of your innocent loved ones, and the blood of innocence, the souls, the energies, the lifeblood of innocent victims of the system and its agent of force and forces are crying out. They are bawling out of the earth unto us, while you all are behaving like fools, while you all are behaving like idiots, while you all have given over your mental, spiritual, and metaphysical human right, earth right, birthright, universal right, and access to your source and ancestral power by foolishly indulging in your enemy's feast, your enemy's follies and immoralities at your own life's dignity and expense. The blood of innocence at the minds and hands of your adversaries are bawling out of the earth unto us for justice, while you have given and are giving over your access to your source and true ancestral power by indulging in the system's master plan for your own extermination. And while you are standing in the way and between us and them, thereby impeding us meting out true spiritual justice, true spiritual judgment, while you are standing in the way, thereby impeding us meting out true and active spiritual justice and retribution, and their killers and their murderers and their killers and murderers, wicked seeds, their descendants and their heirs and successors. So hear this, my people. Thus said the words of our most honorable African ancestors, our source and ancestral gods, to us all, my people. You should never accept the system's blood money, and you must not accept the system's blood money as compensation for the killing, for the slaughtering, and the murdering of your children. Please let me repeat this message for you. Thus said the word, my people. You should never accept the system's blood money. You must not accept the system's blood money as compensation for the killing, as compensation for the slaughtering, and as compensation for the murdering of your children. And in order for me to ensure that by the end of this discourse or this presentation, those of you, my people, that are supposed to get this message will totally know, totally understand, and overstand exactly what I'm talking about. Please let me break it down even further, word for word, beginning with the word system. Yes, so let me break it down for you by answering these 4 questions. Question number 1. What is meant by the system? Or what is the system? Question number 2. What is blood? Or what is meant by blood? Question number 3. What is money? Or what is meant by money? And question number 4. What is meant by the system's blood money? Or what is the system's blood money? Let's focus on question 1. What is meant by the system? Or what is the system? According to one online English dictionary, the word system by meaning and definition is defined as, and I quote, 1. A set of things working together as part of a mechanism or an interconnecting network. And 2, system is defined as, and I quote again, a set of principles or procedures according to which something is done, an organized scheme or method, unquote. So from the logical and practical interpretation of this meaning and definition of the word system, those of us that have an activated intelligence and spiritual insights, and even in accordance with the Adamic race history and holy book, aka the Christian Holy Bible, will agree that when we use the word system, and especially when we use the word system in this that is commonly referred to as this context, know that we are talking about and referring to the government, and especially the one universal central government that, from my perspective, run, rule, govern, and controlled, that is run, rule, govern, and controlled by the earthly Most High God, by the earthly supreme ruler, commonly called Satan, the devil, along with his chosen, hand-picked, mind-picked, brain-picked, and race-picked host of devils, also known as his host of demonic force and forces. In other words, another word for government, for that which is called, or for that which is called the government, is the word system. The government is, or government is a system, also known as a mechanism. Meaning, a government or the government can be accurately described as one, a set of things, also known as a set of ideologies, a set of different agencies, a set of different ministries, a set of different departments, a set of different branches, a set of different facilities, you name them, that are all working together as part of a mechanism or as an interconnecting network. So if this is correct, then we must logically affirm that everything that we see or hear happening, be they so-called good or be they so-called bad, is either directly or indirectly a part of the government, or at the very least, the government is responsible. And two, the government can also be accurately described as a set of principles or a set of ideologies, policies, laws, and procedures, etc., according to which something is done. An organized scheme or method. Finally, for now, on this point, and just to give you two practical examples of what a system is and how it works. The human body is a system, and a motor car is a system. They too can be described as a set of things working together as part of a mechanism or as part of an interconnecting network. So from this, one can logically deduce and conclude that everything that has happened and everything that is happening to us was and is all part of a system, the system also known as the government. But I'll have more to say on this fact at a later time. Question number 2. What is blood? Or what is meant by blood? Blood, by meaning and definition, is, and I quote, the red liquid that circulates in the arteries and veins of us humans and other vertebrate animals, carrying oxygen to and carbon dioxide from the tissues of the body, unquote. From my perspective, blood is the life source and life's energy of the human body. Blood represents life, or blood represents that which we human call life. Blood is life. Blood in almost, if not all, spiritual and even religious practices is considered sacred. Blood is revered. Blood is levitated unto higher awareness. The gift of life to us, their offspring, sorry. Blood is of our source and mother nature, also known as our gods, via our ancestors. It's the gift of life to us, their offspring and ascendants. And quite unlike what the evil system and its agents would have some of us to believe, blood is not in us melanin people to give. Blood is not in us melanin people to give, but blood is in us to live. Blood is in us melanin people, aka African people, to freely and abundantly live and full joy our life. And thus the taking of one's blood is the taking of one's liberty, also known as the taking of one's life. The drawing, the shedding, or the spilling of someone's blood, intentionally or not, is a violation of the spiritual laws of life. And the guilty will be judged. And the guilty must be judged. And the guilty are being judged. The intentional shedding of human blood, and especially the intentional shedding of innocent human blood, or the intentional spilling of innocent human blood, also known as the taking of innocent human lives, is the highest form and manifestation of the immorality and the highest form and manifestation of evil. It is the highest form of abomination and injustice, you name it, that can be done, that are being done, and that can be seen manifesting among us humans and humankind alike. And all those that are guilty will be judged, must be judged, and are being judged. And the evidence will show, and the evidence has shown, that all throughout his story and our story, whenever and wherever blood has been shed, and especially whenever or wherever innocent blood has been shed, and an innocent human life or innocent human lives have been taken, the punishment in the form of disease or diseases, miseries, poverty, confusion, mental and spiritual disturbance or disturbances, disasters, death and destruction surely follow, or surely come upon the guilty. And sometimes, if not oftentimes, quite regrettably and unfortunately, because the guilty live and dwell among the innocent and closely mingle with the innocent. And in most cases, because the guilty disguise themselves among the innocent, judgment in the form of disease or diseases, miseries, poverty, confusion, mental and spiritual disturbance, disasters, death and destruction come upon them both. In other words, the good sometimes suffer for the bad, but I will have much more to say on that point at another time. In fact, the truth be told, the evidence will show, and the evidence has shown, that it is just the workings of our source and our mother nature's spiritual and natural laws. But again, I will have much more to share on these points at a later time. Question number 3. What is money, or what is meant by money? The thing called money by meaning and definition is, and again I quote, a current medium of exchange in the form of coins and banknotes. Coins and banknotes collectively, unquote. And those among us that are aware are indeed aware of the fact that this current medium of exchange and commerce called money is a fraud that is only made legal by the said system, aka the government. And just for those of you that might not be aware of what I'm talking about, I will simply ask that you just type in the question, what is fiat money, F-I-A-T money, into your Google search engine or on your YouTube search engine, and you will get enough answers to make you become well informed as to the reality of this thing called money. Example. Here is a quote from Wikipedia, just to give you an idea of what fiat money, or as some say, what fake money is all about. And I quote, fiat money is a currency without intrinsic value that has been established as money, often by government, or often by government regulation. Fiat money does not have use value and has value only because a government maintains its value or because parties engaging in exchange agree on its value. It was introduced as an alternative to commodity money and representative money. Commodity money is created from a good, often a precious metal such as gold or silver, which has use other than as medium of exchange. Such a good is called a commodity. Representative money is similar to fiat money, but it represents a claim on a commodity, which can be redeemed to a greater or lesser extent, unquote. But here are a few more practical meaning and definition of the thing called money from the Mystic Philosopher's perspective. And even though time will not permit me, nor is this the presentation that is designed to delve deeper into the question to find more detailed answers for what is money, I will introduce the following few points and elaborate on them in greater detail at another time. Number one, money is the mark of the beast. Number two, money or the thing called money is an evil alien ideology. Number three, money is the system's instrument, aka the government's instrument for all forms of slavery and oppression. Number four, money or the thing called money is the root of all evil. As promised, at some future date, ancestors willing, I will delve much deeper into these points. Question number four. What is meant by the system's blood money, or what is the system's blood money? Blood money or blood monies are money that have been received, earned, gained, inherited, etc. as a result of or that involves the exploitation, the enslavement, the oppression, the pain and suffering of innocent and defenseless people, or the shedding of innocent blood, or the taking of innocent life or lives, etc. From my perspective, the system is guilty of all the above mentioned evils and atrocities, coupled with the fact that it is itself evil. It is itself corrupt and unjust, and thus, for all intents and purposes, all of the system's money is indeed blood money. However, in these particular circumstances, or rather particular circumstance, as it pertains to us, the Earth's original and organic humans, we the Earth's natural native humans, of high melanin, carbon skin, complexion, aka Africans, that the malevolent system called, named, labeled, and marked with the mark of death, black. The system's blood money is money that the system or the government has paid out and is paying out to the families and loved ones of those among us whose blood have been drawn, whose lives have been taken, and all those among us that have fallen innocent victims of the system's agents of force and forces. So here the spirit of our most honorable African ancestors are saying to us, my people, all, and especially to all the fallen innocent victims' families that have already received money, and those that are currently in the process of taking money, that, and I quote, you should never accept the system's blood money as compensation for the killing of your children. You must not, and you must never accept the system's blood money as compensation for the slaughter of your sons and your daughters. No, you must never accept the system's hush money as compensation for the murder of your loved ones. What is meant by compensation? Compensation, according to one online English dictionary, and I quote, 1. Something, typically money, awarded to someone as a recompense for loss, injury, or suffering. And 2. The action or process of awarding someone money as a recompense for loss, injury, or suffering. Unquote. Why is it wrong? And why should we not accept money or other forms of compensation from the system for the loss of our innocent loved ones' lives, especially at the hands of the system's agents of force and forces? Here are a few undisputable facts that most of you, my people, are totally unaware of, and undisputable facts that you must now know in order to fully understand, and understand the reasons why you should not and must not take the system's blood money, especially as compensations for the killing, slaughtering, and murdering of our people by its agents of force and forces. Fact number 1. Every life that is taken, every blood that is shed, and especially every innocent life of our melanin people, and every innocent blood of our African people that have been taken and are being shed by the system's weapons, aka Satan's weapons and his agents of force and forces, are a sacrifice that is being made to the system's God and earthly supreme ruler, also known as Satan the devil and his host of devils. And for your information, it does not matter if the innocent life or lives taken are as a direct or as an indirect result of the invention, creation, manufacturing, sales, and distribution of the system's guns, bombs, or its other weapons of mass destruction. It does not matter if the innocent life or lives taken are the result of the system's creation and expansion of all forms of wars, or as the result of the dropping of bombs, so-called strikes, be it air strikes, land and sea strikes, on innocent women and children. It does not matter if the innocent lives taken are as a result of the creation, sales, and availability, you name it, of guns and ammunition, also known as Satan's weapons, to the ignorant, sales of these weapons to the ignorant poor, to the marginalized, to the stigmatized, and to the disenfranchised people that in return and in their ignorance use it to kill, slaughter, or to murder themselves. It does not matter if the innocent life or lives taken are as a result of abducting, kidnapping, and organ harvesting, also known as organ procurement or organ transplantation, especially where it is the poor and innocent among us that are being exploited and victimized. It does not matter if the innocent life or lives that are being taken are the result of the cruel and merciless hands of the system's agents of force and forces, you name it. But the fact is that it is a sacrifice, and they are sacrifices that are being made to the system's God and the system's earthly supreme ruler, also known as Satan the devil and his host of devils. And only a devil itself, himself, or herself, or only they, the devils, would deny and try to deny this fact and these truths. Fact number 2, a sacrifice by meaning and definition is, and again I quote, an act of slaughtering an animal or a person, or the act of surrendering a possession as an offering to God or to a divine or supreme, or rather to a divine or supernatural figure, unquote. I ask that you please note from this one definition that a sacrifice does not only involve the slaughtering and offering of animals, but that of humans, also known as human sacrifices. And for those of you, my melanin people, that do not believe, let alone know and understand that human sacrifices to Satan and his host of devils is a daily occurrence, is definitely out to lunch, meaning you are truly ignorant of all that is happening here and now in this life. Fact number 3, every life that is taken or every blood that is shed, be it that of an animal or that of a natural native earthly human, the fact is that it is an act of sacrifice. Or if you prefer, every life that is taken or every blood that is shed, be it that of an animal or that of a natural native earthly human, the fact is that it is an act, it is an offering to a god, or it is an act, an offering to some gods, to some spirits, to some entities, or to a divine or supernatural figure, etc. And for your information, it does not necessarily matter where they slaughter us, when they slaughter us, how they slaughter us, or the reason they may try to give as to why they slaughter us, or as to why they are slaughtering us. The core intent and resultant still remain the same, meaning we are being sacrificed. Fact number 4. Fact number 4 can and will be best explained and understood by answering the question, what is the purpose of a sacrifice? In other words, why do we make sacrifice? Or why do people in general make sacrifices? Why do people make any form of sacrifice for that matter? The answer to this question is quite simple. People, or we all, make sacrifices with the honest intent of gaining something in return from the god, gods, entity, spirits, person, or thing to whom the sacrifice or sacrifices are made. The truth be told, all sacrifices are made with some form of expectation. No one make a sacrifice, or no one makes sacrifice for nothing, or no one make a sacrifice and expect nothing in return. From the Mystic Philosopher's perspective, the purpose of a blood sacrifice, and especially in the form of our melanin African people's particular case, when they meaning our enemies, when they slaughter us, or when they slaughter our innocent loved ones and brethren, they are consciously and unconsciously offering up our blood, our life's energy, our spirits, and in some cases our physical bodies to the system's God, to the system's earthly supreme ruler, also known as the spiritual entity called Satan the devil. For what purpose? To both appease him and to seek and to receive his favor, and to further empower themselves by him, or to be empowered by him, so that they can become more charged, also known as more possessed with force and forces, so that they may and will become more charged with power by him, the chief of force and forces, and so that they may continue to subdue us, to enslave us, to brutalize and abuse us, to despise us, and finally to exterminate us, etc. For those of you that may have listened to some or all of my previous talks here on this The LanceScurv Show, you will remember me clearly explaining while proving my point as to why the alien entity, the chief architect and manifestation of evil, that is commonly called Satan the devil, is the supreme ruler, the sovereign and the most high God of the earth. You may also remember me quoting from the Adamic race history and holy book, aka the Christian Holy Bible, that also declare that Satan, the entity, also known as the man, is also known as the man that rule and run things here on the planet Earth. And that only he, Satan, or his servants and seeds would try to deny this fact. More truth be told, we are all under Satan's subjection. But let me save that for another time. And just to reaffirm this fact, I will read and prove to you that I'm not the only one who know this of a fact. So please let me again read 2 quotes from the Adamic Race History and Holy Book for you. Quote number 1. Satan, who is the God of this world, have blinded the minds of those who don't believe. They are unable to see the glorious light of the good news. They don't understand this message about the glory of Christ, who is the exact likeness of God. 2 Corinthians 4 and verse 4 from the Living Translation Bible. Quote number 2. The devil led him up to a high place and showed him in an instant all the kingdoms of the world. And he said to him, I will give you all their authority and splendor. It has been given to me, and I can give it to anyone I want to. If you worship me, it will all be yours. Unquote. Luke 5 from the Adamic Race History and Holy Book. Luke 4, 5 to 7, the NIV version. Now please note that these are not my words. These are the words of the Systems Bible, aka the Systems Holy Book. And why do I say it's the System Bible? Of course it is. They swear by it. They do everything by it. Fact number 5. The evidence will show, and the evidence has also shown, that the more innocent and virtuous the victims that are slaughtered, the more pleasing it is to the God or gods to whom they are made. And the more appreciative it is to the God or gods. And the more pleasing and appreciative they are to the God or gods, the more their God or gods grant them. Them meaning the slaughterers, also known as the killers and murderers. The more the gods grant them their request. And what are some of the requests to the God or gods that these killers and murderers made? They are requests for favor and for them to be favored by their God or gods. Their request for material wealth. Their request for the system's money. Their request for the system's promotions, especially in their jobs and in their businesses. Their request for the system's fame and to be famous. Their request for the system's power. The system's power to deceive and power to cover up their evil deeds and deceptions. And above all, request for the power, for the system's power to dominate, to rule, and to control others. And the evidence has shown, and the evidence will no doubt continue to show, that the God or gods to whom our innocent melanin people are being slaughtered and our blood have been and are being offered up as sacrifices is the above mentioned God and supreme ruler of the earth, also known as Satan and his host of devils. Fact number 6. The system's blood money is cursed money. And there is no good whatsoever that can or that will come from cursed money. But that you will be cursed. You too will be cursed. Fact number 7. Another undisputable fact and possible one of the most important facts, if not the most important fact that most of you, my African people, are totally unaware of. An undisputable fact that you must now know in order to fully understand and overstand the reasons why you should not and must not take the system's blood money, especially as compensation for the killing and murdering of your people by its agents of force and forces. The moment that you open up your mind to the idea of accepting the system's blood money, you are immediately defiled. And the moment that you accept their offerings, let alone allow their blood money to touch your hands and into your bank account, you too will become a curse, or you too will be cursed. For thus saith the word of the spirits of our most honorable African ancestors. For if you accept the system's blood money, you will become an accomplice to the devil's sacrifice. And as an accomplice, you too are guilty of the evil violation and the crime against your fellow human. And as such, you too will be punished, and the punishment will be shared equally with your now fellow accomplice, your fellow co-conspirators. If or when any of you, my African people, are deceived, or if or when any of you, my people, ever allow yourself to be deceived into accepting the system's blood money, you are or you will become a traitor and a betrayer of your loved ones. It is as if you had intentionally and literally negotiated the sale of your loved one's life to the devil for cash. And only I, the Mystic Philosopher, and few other knowledgeable, like-minded people will and can tell you these things. For most of you, my people, your pastors or your shepherd won't tell you this and can't tell you this because, number one, they really don't know this fact. And number two, they are more concerned about getting their minimum 10% cut that they deceptively call tithe, plus other peace offering, free will offerings, church building funds, etc. from the deal that they don't even would give a damn about what I am saying to you. And just for those of you that might be offended by me saying they, meaning the guilty pastors, are more concerned about getting their minimum 10% cut that they deceptively call tithe. Well, to the best of my knowledge, tithe is, by meaning and definition, and again I quote, 1/10 of annual produce or earnings, formerly taken as a tax for the support of the church and clergy. Let me repeat again. This thing called tithe, it is 1/10 of annual produce or earnings. Formerly, it was taken as a tax for the support of the church and clergy. If this is correct, then unless you earn an income, then you cannot pay or give tithe. And to claim to be doing so from any other money that you may have received in order to survive is to be lying to both your God and your fellow brethren. And the church or pastors that knowingly take such money as tithe are deceivers themselves. Secondly, if this meaning and definition of tithe is indeed correct, then our activated common sense will tell us that tithe cannot be paid in advance and that it should only be paid annually or once a year. In other words, if you have a job, there is no guarantee that you might not get fired, laid off, or something may not come up, thereby hindering you from earning your expected annual income. And if you pay by faith and in advance, and your income is significantly less than your expected yearly income, then the church should refund you some money. And on top of that, and in the strictest sense of the word tithe, tithe should and tithe must only be paid to the Levi priesthood in the Bible. But let me leave that for others to argue. Sorry. Your lawyers that may know your lawyers that may know sure ain't gonna tell you this fact either. Your lawyers that know this truth ain't gonna tell you this fact either. Because, in fact, meaning that you shouldn't be taking the system's blood money. Because he or she might well be looking at a 30% cut or more of the lump sum of blood money you receive. Your family, who know or who may know this fact, sure ain't gonna tell you, because they too are looking for a cut or some spin-off financial benefits, you name it. For your information, my people, the moment you take their blood money, you are immediately placed under their evil spell. For example, just note of how the system use and control all those parents and guardians of the victims of force and forces that they gave blood money. The minute they gave them, or the minute they give them money, they literally, suggestively, or covertly ordered them to go and pacify the crowd and all those of their fellow melanin brothers and sisters that may be even putting their own lives and safety at risk to march, to speak out, and to protest the killings, and to call for justice on the behalf of the victims and the victims' families. But once they get the money, or get the system's blood money, or even before they get it, but once they sense a settlement, or once they are promised a settlement, a payout, a lump sum, etc., you see or hear them come out, and one of the first thing out of some of them, or one of some of the first words that come out of their mouths is, I forgive him, or I forgive her. I am praying for him, or I am praying for them. So let's move on, etc. Not knowing that they themselves have now just joined, they have now just become active participants in the slaughtering of their own children and loved ones' lives. If or when any of you, my people, are deceived into accepting the system's blood money, you are or you will become an accessory, a collaborator, a co-conspirator, or you will become an accessory, a collaborator, or a co-conspirator with the slaughterers, with the killers and with the murderers of your sons and daughters that were slaughtered and that are being slaughtered or killed as a sacrifice or as sacrifices to the devil. Consequently, true peace and true happiness cannot and will not attend your way. And true peace and true happiness will never again attend your way. Your lives will be filled with nothing but emptiness, unhappiness, miseries, depression, torment, pain, suffering, sickness, and regrets. And even if you should come to your senses and change your mind after you have accepted the system's blood money, you still cannot escape the curse. The fact is that nature and the laws of physics teach us that for every action there is an opposite and equal reaction. And for every innocent life taken, there is retribution and compensation. Remember the old saying, as a man sow or as a woman sow, so shall he or she reap. And though it may appear to us from time to time that there are those among us that have gotten away with murder, and that there are those among us that are still getting away with murder and all forms of wrongdoings and wickedness, you name it, the fact is that there is natural justice. Or as some of our elders and sage would say, that there is a higher justice that is administered and will be administered in what may be described as the fourth dimension, also commonly called time. But more on this at another time. The fact is that the old saying that no sin goes unpunished, or there is no sins that will go unpunished, is from my perspective true. For those of you that may have taken the time and listened to my song titled Death is No Escape, will no doubt heard me say that, and I quote, "Death is no escape from all the crimes that you have committed. Your wrongs just won't disappear while your body falls asleep. There's a universal account where Akashic records are submitted. Like a convict in a court of law, your own docket you do keep," unquote. Before I continue, please let me quickly give you an example of the system's curse money and its deadly consequences to all those that received it. This example can be found in the Adamic Race History and Holy Book called the Christian Holy Bible. And again I quote, "Early in the morning, all the chief priests and elders of the people made their plans how to have Jesus executed. So they bound him, led him away, and handed him over to Pilate, the governor. When Judas, who had betrayed him, saw that Jesus was condemned, he was seized with remorse and returned the 30 pieces of silver to the chief priest and the elders. 'I have sinned,' he said, 'for I have betrayed innocent blood.' 'What is that to us?' they replied. 'That's your responsibility.' So Judas threw the money into the temple and left. Then he went away and hanged himself. The chief priest picked up the coins and said, 'It's against the law to put this into the treasury, since it is blood money.' So they decided to use the money to buy the potter's field as a burial place for foreigners. This is why it has been called the field of blood to this day." Unquote. I just read from the book of Matthew 27 from verse 1 to 8 in the New International Version. Now, there are so much lessons that could be learned or can be learned about the dangers and evils of this thing called money from just this one story that time will not permit me to get into them all. But the few that I would like to quickly point out here are as follows. Number one, because of the lust, because of the hunger, ambition, and thirst for this thing called money, and the false sense of solutions, ease, happiness, freedom, security, fame, success, and power, etc., that this thing called money brings, this fellow called Judas did not even have a second thought about the deadly consequences of selling out, of ratting out, of backstabbing, and betraying his closest friend, his brother, his spiritual teacher and mentor to his enemies. Number two, if we think or believe just for one moment that the people that are known and professed lovers of money, the people that we know that are known and professed lovers of money, known and professed lovers of material wealth, power, fame, and success, that are the closest to us, be they our spouses, families, friends, business associates, business partners, religious brethren, be they our brothers and sisters in the cause or in the movement, especially those that are claiming to be on the road to restoration, you name it, or you name them. Those that claim or might be claiming to have your back, that claim or be claiming that they will stand by you through thick and thin, thick or thin, or when the going get tough, you name it. If you for one moment think or believe that they won't or that they can't be deceived into betraying you or throwing you under the bus for the system's blood money or betray you just to cover their own ass, then you are most certainly not at all wise, to say the least. And just to further emphasize this point, I would just like to recite the very profound words of one of Bob Marley's songs called Man to Man. It's also known as Who the Cap Fit. And I quote, it said, "Man to man is so unjust. Children, you just don't know who to trust. Your worst enemy could be your best friend, and your best friend could be your worst enemy. Some will eat and drink with you, then behind you they suss upon you. Only your friend know your secrets, so only he could reveal it. And who the cap fit, let them wear it. So I throw my corn. Me no call no foul. I'm saying cook, 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 clock, clock, clock. Some will hate you. Pretend they love you now. Then behind you, they try to eliminate you. But who Jah bless, no one curse. Thank God. We are not. We are past the worst. Hypocrites and parasites will come up and take a bite. And if your night should turn to day, a lot of people would run away. And who the cap fit, let them wear it. Unquote. Number 3, or point number 3, and I quote, when Judas, who had betrayed him, saw that Jesus was condemned, he was seized with remorse and returned the 30 pieces of silver to the chief priest and elders. I have sinned, he said, for I have betrayed innocent blood. What is that to us? They replied. That is your responsibility. So Judas threw the money into the temple and left. Then he went and hung himself. The chief priest picked up the money, or picked up the coins, and said, it's against the law to put this into the treasury, since it is blood money. So they decided to use the money to buy the potter's field as a burial place for foreigners. Unquote. I would like to spend a little extra time right here on this portion of the scriptures, and again point out something, or more correctly, a lesson that a lot of people, including some, if not all, of the great Bible scholars, preachers, Christians, and saints, etc., have either not seen or overlooked or just failed to recognize simply because of their despise for this one of Jesus' disciples called Judas. And how relevant this lesson is to all of those among us today that are the recipient of the system's blood money, and those that are considering receiving the system's blood money. Quote again, when Judas, who had betrayed him, saw that Jesus was condemned, he was seized with remorse and returned the 30 pieces of silver to the chief priests and elders and said, I have sinned, he said, for I have betrayed innocent blood. Unquote. From my perspective, Judas was not an inherently wicked, heartless, or an inherently evil person or evil human like some of our enemies, if not all of our enemies today. Meaning Judas was not like our enemies that we see and know today, that the evidence has shown, and the evidence will no doubt continue to show, that they are genetically predisposed to bringing us meaning African and Melanin people, only harm. From my perspective, unlike them, our enemies, Judas had a heart of a human, meaning unlike us Melanin people's enemies, namely the black Caucasians and the black Arabs and the black others today, Judas had and expressed empathy. Judas had and expressed sympathy, remorse, regretful emotions, etc. Having realized what had become of his brethren as a result of him, Judas being deceived because of his desire for the system's money. From my perspective, unlike our enemies today, namely the black Caucasians, the black Arabs, and the black others, that the evidence has shown, and that the evidence will no doubt continue to show, that they will intentionally and maliciously call the police equal force officers on us, knowing fully well in advance what will be the consequences of their deliberate and malicious actions. Judas did not honestly and intentionally betray his friend, his brethren, and his teacher, because he, Judas, knew beforehand that he, meaning Jesus, was going to be killed, or even that he could have been killed, let alone being killed by these bunch of weak-ass, sinful people. In other words, there is no evidence that I am currently aware of showing or even suggesting that he, Judas, was informed by his Jewish elders that after he betrayed Jesus, and were they to capture him, and they were going to have him killed by the Romans. Judas has no such knowledge. There is absolutely no evidence suggesting or supporting that such a possibility exists, or to supporting that possibility or that theory. And even if it were so, knowing the malicious powers and skills, rather, let me repeat, knowing the miraculous, not malicious, knowing the miraculous powers and skills that his brother, his teacher Jesus possessed, coupled with his faith in him to defend himself. Remember, Judas saw this man escape being stoned to death by some of the most experienced stone throwers in his time. Judas saw this guy skip multiple stones being thrown at him, and he escaped unhurt, unscathed. These stone throwers of that time would be comparable to sharpshooters and marksmen and women today, and yet they couldn't hit him. Yet none of the stone they throw just didn't get to him. He was able to escape. So Judas knows this guy has powers and abilities to escape those forms of attack. Judas even saw or heard of his brethren Jesus walking on water and calming storms and rough seas, etc. Therefore, he would not even think that such a capture, let alone such a crucifixion, was even possible. To Judas, he no doubt thought that was the quickest and easiest 30 pieces of silver he could have ever earned in his lifetime, and not being in the least aware of the destruction that was to follow. 30 pieces of silver now possibly be around 3 million or 30 million, who knows? Well, lots of money back then. It was the easiest thing Judas saw, the easiest way to earn, because they just can't touch his brethren. This is like a Bruce Lee. No guy can beat this. So you're going to bet me say you'll capture him. I know it's impossible, so just take the money. Anyhow, and the same thing is true for those of us today that have been deceived and are being deceived into claiming and taking the system's blood money for the loss of our loved ones, or for the loss of their loved ones. As soon as the agents of force and forces kill their loved ones, either the system's lawyers come knocking at their doors, or they will go knocking on the system's lawyers' doors. They were not, and they are not fully aware of the destruction and the torment and mental anguish, etc., that were and that are to come upon them later. Please take note that what we know now, Judas did not know then. And that is why we melanin people today must think several times over before we even think of taking the system's blood money, thereby betraying our loved ones, and thereafter live our lives like Judas, filled with remorse. From my perspective, quite unlike our enemies today, when Judas saw that his friend, his brother Jesus, was condemned to death, he was seized with remorse. And so, in an attempt to redeem himself and possibly reverse the trend, he immediately returned the 30 pieces of silver, also known as the blood money, to the chief priests and elders, while confessing that he had sinned and that he had betrayed innocent blood. Here again, we can see that quite unlike our enemies today, namely the black Caucasians, the black Arabs, and the black others, Judas had a heart, and he tried to make amends, even though late, by returning the blood money. But here we see today that our enemies invade our land. Our enemies capture our people, stole and capture our land, pillage, sodomize, rape our men, women and children, kill, slaughter, murder, and enslave our people. You name it. And not only do they not show any form of remorse, though admittedly not having the human ability to do so, But they even now turn around and is selling our land and our other possessions back to us. Another quote. What is that to us? They replied. That is your responsibility. Unquote. From my perspective, once you make a deal with Satan the devil, also known as the system, he is the first to honor his half of the deal. Satan or the system has no problem whatsoever paying forward and upfront and in full, for he knows the penalty that one have to pay for breaking a contract with him. And just for your information, the word deal is just another word for devil. And anyone and everyone that you know or heard of talking about a deal or making deals, you must know are agents of the devil, if not the devil, him or herself. So here we see the devils telling Judas that it is his responsibility to deal with the consequences of the deal he made with them. These devils' their only interest is in us. Or their only interest in us is to use us and then dispose of us. 5, quote. So Judas threw the money into the temple and left. Then he went away and hung himself, unquote. Here is another great example, wherein another great lesson of the dangerous consequences of receiving the system's blood money can be learned from this portion of the scripture, by simply asking and correctly answering the following question. Why did Judas went and hang himself? From my perspective, Judas went and hung himself not primarily because of his remorse and his betrayal of his friend and teacher, but because of the fact that all of his closest friends, associates, and religious brethren, also known as his fellow Christians, you may add, that he had hung out with, that he walked with, that he had shared all his secrets with, that he lived with, ate with, drank with, studied with, prayed with, worshiped with, you name it, for 3 or more years, and whose listening ear, whose support, understanding, and forgiveness he now sought, and whose listening ear, support, understanding, and forgiveness he thought he had, and whose listening ear, support, understanding, and forgiveness that he now needed the most, had turned their backs on him, closed their doors on him, and rejected him. He was left alone to fight with all the unforgiving demons that the system's blood money brings. And so, in an attempt to find some peace, and with nowhere else to go, or no one left to turn to, he went and hung himself. In fact, I have no reason to doubt that a lot of our people that received the system's blood money ended up lonely and dejected because for some strange or possible unknown reason to them, their own families and close friends just use them and then turn their backs on them. Quote, another quote. The chief priest picked up the coins and said, it's against the law to put this into the treasury since it is blood money. So they decided to use the money to buy the potter's field as a burial place for foreigners. And that is why it has been called the field of blood to this day, unquote. So here you too can clearly see for yourselves that blood money, meaning money that is received from the system as compensation for the loss of your loved ones at the hands of the system's agents of force and forces, ain't supposed to be accepted by your elders, your priests, your priestesses, your pastors, your religious teachers, etc., let alone become part of the church or the part of the religious treasury, because it is cursed money. And so are all those who receive it. And I quote, it is against the law to put this into the treasury since it is blood money. So, another quote, so they decided to use the money to buy the potter's field as a burial place for foreigners. And that is why it is called the Field of Blood to this day. Unquote. From my perspective, the only thing that you, my people, should or may accept from the system after its agents of force and forces slaughter, kill, or murder your loved ones is that they cover all funeral expenses, also known as burial expenses. And please don't even let that money touch or pass through your hands before it is paid to the undertaker or the people who provide the funeral services. But you should and you must not accept anything else from them. This I will further explain later. So here you can clearly see for yourselves, according to this story, that even though Judas repented and brought back the money, it was still too late. It was still much too late. And the only peace he could have had, or the only temporary peace that he could have found, was to go hang himself. Thereby, his physical body could rest in peace. But the big question is this: what then become of his spirit, or of his soul and energy, etc.? Number 4, or point number 4. From here you can see and know and also get the answer to the question, why is it that people who receive the system's blood money never end well? You show I, the Mystic Philosopher, one person or one family that receive the system's blood money that are truly happy, and I will show you a liar or someone really sick. For if you accept the system's blood money, you will have compromised your spiritual birthright for ancestral justice. In other words, you will become a sellout. You will have accepted compensation from your enemies that is way below the standards of our source and ancestors' true justice and retribution. For if you accept the system's blood money, you will have become one with force and the forces of evil. You will no more have any moral high ground to stand on, or from which to ask for true justice from our natural source and ancestors. Moreover, the spirits and souls of your loved ones cannot find peace and will not find peace knowing that you, their own blood, have double-crossed them, have betrayed them by taking the system's blood money for their lives, thereby freeing their killers and murderers of spiritual penalties that are due unto them and their children. For unless one is a greedy and selfish humankind, how can one knowingly participate in this evil by taking the system's blood money and not expect that there will be some very serious and disturbing repercussions? So what should you then do? So, put the case in the hands of our honorable ancestors and let the killers and their systems of force perish with their blood money. So here our source and most honorable ancestors are telling us that we should look to them in the spirit realm for true, swift and speedy retributive justice on the wicked killers and murderers of our loved ones, and also true, swift and speedy retributive justice upon the wicked killers and murderers' loved ones, their young ones and their descendants down to their 10th generation or generations and beyond. And most definitely not to the evil system so-called justice, also known as their just them system or their just us system. Here our source via our ancestors is saying to us that we should and that we must make our petition known to them for justice upon our enemies, and especially the killers and murderers of our children. And why their children, some of you my people might be asking, why upon their children? Well, and for your information, our enemies have no problem whatsoever messing with and cursing our children. They have no problem whatsoever doing it or killing our children. And So, and why their children, some of you, my people, might ask. Well, and for your information, our enemies, God, have no problem whatsoever messing with and cursing our children. And this truth can be seen all throughout their holy book. For example, all throughout the Adamic race, history, and holy book, we see that the Adamic God does not skin up when it comes to punishing the children of the enemies of his people, and even the children of his own people. Maintain, and I quote, maintaining love to thousands and forgiving wickedness, rebellion, and sins. Yet he does not leave the guilty unpunished. He punishes the children and their children for the sins of the parents to the third and fourth generation, unquote. This is from their book, Exodus 34 and verse 7, the New International Version. Thus said our source and most honorable ancestors, if you, my people, my highly enriched melanin African people, if you, my people which are called by my name, you, my people upon whom my countenance ever brightly shine, if you, my people, my highly enriched melanin people, aka my African people, who bear and possess it, our natural DNA, if you will know yourselves for who and what you are, and equally if you will know your enemies for who and what they are as well, and if you, my people, should turn away from your enemies' religions, your enemies' deceptive religions and religious practices, your enemies' belief systems, your enemies' customs and traditions, your enemies' strange and vengeful gods, saviors, and prophets, etc., and recognize us, your ancestors and source. Accept us as you. And if you will turn from your enemies' wicked ways and call upon us, invoke us, and petition us for help, then and only then can we, and then and only then will we come to your rescue. Then and only then will you see your enemies subdued and defeated right before your very eyes. For as long as you, my people, that are called by our name, continue to do the same thing over and over again, and are expecting a different and favorable result, then that is only proving, and that will only prove to your enemies that you are not at all wise. For example, as long as you continue to pray to your enemies' God, and to your oppressors' God and gods for mercy and deliverance, etc., as long as you continue to practice your enemies, aka your oppressors' religions, worship your enemies' gods and gods, etc., then not only will you not be successful, but you will continue to prove to your enemies and your oppressors that you are not wise. You should never accept the system's blood money as compensation for the killing of your elders. You must never claim or accept the system's blood money as compensation for their so-called reparations, for the chattel slavery, murders, oppression, and abuse of your honorable ancestors. Let me just talk to you a bit and share some of my perspective on this thing called reparations. It is alleged that Albert Einstein made the following statement, and I quote, "We cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we use to create them," unquote. In fact, it is alleged that the same Albert Einstein said that, and I quote, "Insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results." So I, the Mystic Philosopher, would like to borrow this profound statement and re-emphasize the fact that we melanin/African people cannot solve our problems with the same thinking that were used to create them. And what is our problem? Or what are our problems? Well, the truth be told, and even though this will no doubt offend some people, but from my perspective, and assuming that we can effectively read, interpret, and use this our oppressor's language, the English language, all our problems can be easily summed up in just one word, the word black. Or for clarity of expression and emphasis to whom it may concern, all our problems can also be summed up in one word phrase, and that word phrase is be black. And from my perspective, for all those among us whose basic common sense is activated, and those that are not totally under the Belak spell, and its hypnotic trance, also known as ignorance, will admit that the evidence has shown, and the evidence will no doubt continue to show, that it is the people that are called, named, labeled, carded, profiled, marked, and listed black that lack the most. You name it, and the evidence will show, and the evidence has shown for all those that have senses that are activated to see that they are the ones that lack the most. So if this is correct, we may and we can logically deduce that our problem is lack, or all our problems are enveloped in lack. Now, if Albert Einstein is correct, then the evidence will show that we melanin people, African people, cannot solve our problems with the same thinking that were used to create them. And what were the thinking that were used to create our problems? First, let me make it very clear that the thinking that created our problem, and by extension our problems, were not and are not ours. Meaning they are not and they were not of our most honorable African ancestors. But it was and they are the thinking, also known as the ideology, of our aggressors, invaders, conquerors, capturers, occupiers, colonizers, slave traders, slave masters, and oppressors, also known as the Black Caucasians and the Black Arabs. And the name of their thinking was and is called money, also known as the slavery economic system. And from our own personal and practical life experiences in this system, the one word that those of us that are at the very least semi-enlightened will use to describe and represent it is money. Money is the word, and the word is evil. In other words, if the slavery economic system is evil, and if the slavery economic system is money, then by logical deduction, we must know and admit that money is evil. So from my perspective, as long as we decided we are deceived, as long as we are deceived into embracing the thinking, also known as the alien ideology of our oppressors called money, the thinking that got us in the black, also known as the Belak status that we are in, then we must forever be lack. And to think that reparation, especially in the form of the system's blood money, will or can solve our problems is, from my perspective, definitely not wise. But the truth be told, I think that I have caused enough controversy, create enough enemies, and expected ignoramus and sarcastic blowback here already, so I will not get into arguing this point any further. You must never claim or accept the system's blood money as compensation for their so-called reparation for the chattel slavery, murder, and oppression and abuse of our honorable ancestors. What is reparations? Or what is meant by reparation? According to the Black's Law Dictionary online, reparation is defined as, and I quote, the redress of an injury, amends for a wrong inflicted, unquote. According to the Merriam-Webster's Dictionary online, the word reparation is defined as, and I quote, 1A, repairing or keeping in repair. 1B, reparations, plural, repairs. 2A, the act of making amends, offering expiation, or giving satisfaction for a wrong or injury. 2B, something done or given as amends or satisfaction. And 3, the payment of damages, indemnification, specifically compensation in money or materials payable by a defeated nation for damages to or expenditures sustained by another nation as a result of hostilities with the defeated nation, usually used in plural, unquote. My search and research has thus far shown that the act of the aggressor, aka the conquering state or the conquering nation, paying or giving reparations to the conquered state or nation is a very recent event or recent occurrence. It is a very recent gesture, and that it is and was not done as a matter of the aggressors, also known as the conquering state or the conquering nation's legal obligations to do so, but it was done as a matter of mercy or as a gesture of goodwill, etc. From what I have discovered thus far is that it was the conquered states or nations that had to pay for the repairs or pay reparations to the conqueror, also known as the winner. Here is evidence of this fact right here in this definition tree of the word reparation by the Merriam-Webster's Dictionary online. Again, I quote, reparation, the payment of damages, indemnification, specifically compensation in money or materials payable by a defeated nation for damages to or expenditures sustained by another nation as a result of hostility with the defeated nation, usually used in plural form, unquote. So what I have discovered is that it was always the winner, the conqueror, who plunder and takes it all. For example, the winner or the conqueror in a war would plunder, loot, and take the loser's gold, silver, land, religious artifacts, and any and everything of value. In fact, the winner or the conqueror would take even the women and children, the animals as their concubines, their prostitutes and their slaves, etc. Yes, it was the winner or the conqueror that would pillage and plunder the subdued nation and the conquered people of everything of value. And what is the reason for them doing that, some of you might be asking? Well, from my perspective, the main reason for them doing that is to ensure that the conquered nation or the conquered state or the conquered people remain poor, that they remain subdued, that they remain weak and totally dependent on the aggressor and the oppressor's state. It's all about power, dominance, subjugation and control, even more than greed. However, that is not the subject of my discussion at this time or in this presentation. I just thought I should mention it and hope that some scholars or so-called black scholars would either take these facts into consideration and expound on them when next they talk about getting reparations from the system that oppressed us all. Now, regardless of what we may know or what we may think or believe about this thing called reparation, and regardless of how we may individually or collectively interpret the word or the concept reparation, the fact is that we will and we must all agree that as a people, also known as African people, and especially those of us that are the remnants of the direct victims of the malevolent Caucasoid transatlantic slave trade, we must admit that we have been severely damaged, broken. We must admit that we are being severely damaged. And we must also admit that we are severely damaged. And arguably, some of us are even severely damaged or severely broken beyond possible repair. Arguably, some of us are too far gone to even attempt repairs. As the Earth's original and organic humans, we have been, we are being, and we are severely damaged physically, genetically, sexually, emotionally, psychologically, mentally, intellectually, morally, spiritually, energetically, historically, you name them. And the evidence will show And the evidence has shown that as once wholesome natural native earthly human, we are damaged, we are broken. You name them. And the evidence has and will show that we are severely damaged by and through our regretful encounter and experiences with and under the demonic control of the malevolent alien invaders, aggressors, conquerors, slave traders, and slave masters, the creatures also known as the black Caucasians and the black Arabs. Now then, if that is true, can someone please tell I, the mystic philosopher, what kind of reparation or reparations can we get, or what kind of reparations can we expect to get from our enemies, the malevolent black Caucasians? Reparations, especially in the form of their evil systems, blood money, that can rejuvenate us, that could repair us, or that will restore us, thereby making us wholesome again. My late mom used to say, and I quote, "We're gone by the morning, can't come good evening." Meaning if someone or something starts out wrong, or if someone or something starts out on the wrong path in the beginning, then he or she or it just cannot end up right in the end. Or if someone or something starts out right in the beginning, but later he, she, or it gets diverted onto the wrong path, and especially if he or she or it is allowed to continue on the same wrong path, then our activated common sense should dictate to us that he, she, or it just cannot end up right or at the right destination. Another way of looking at what my late mama said is that if it is true that as the Earth's original, organic, and highly enriched melanin humans, we have been damaged, broken, that we are being damaged, that we are severely damaged physically, genetically, sexually, morally, emotionally, psychologically, mentally, intellectually, spiritually, energetically, historically, you name them. And if it is true that the evidence will show, and the evidence has shown, that as humans we are damaged by and through our regretful encounter and experiences with and under the demonic control and subjugation of our malevolent invaders, aggressors, conquerors, slave traders, and slave masters, also known as the black Caucasians and the black Arabs. If that is true, then can someone please tell I, the mystic philosopher, what kind of reparations can we get, or should we expect to get, in the form of the system's blood money, also known as the system's curse money, that can rejuvenate us, that could repair us, or that will restore us, thereby making us wholesome once again? And still another way of looking at what my late mom used to say, and maybe just to provoke some of you to think a little bit more out of the box, that the system has placed us all in, is that corrupt seeds, also known as damaged seeds, cannot bring forth fruits that are themselves not corrupted and will not be corrupted. Or that a damaged people like us cannot bring forth, rear, and produce seeds, also known as children or offspring, that are not themselves in the least damaged, or that will not be damaged. And if that is true, we must admit that we have a very serious problem on our hands. And if we are to admit that we have a very serious problem, then the billion-dollar question or questions are these: what is the solution, or what are the solutions that will both make us whole once more and restore our natural and rightful status and our rightful position upon the earth? Is it the system's reparation or reparations? Just I, the mystic philosopher, thinking out loud. And from this, we must also logically affirm that the cause of our corruption, also known as the cause of our damage, cannot be the solution. In other words, the cause of our damage cannot provide the solution. Or those and that which have caused our corruption, also known as our damage, cannot and will not provide the solution or solutions for the problem that it or they have intentionally created. And again, just to quote Albert Einstein, we cannot solve our problems by using the same kind of thinking that were used when we created them. Or in my own words, we cannot solve our problems by using the same kind of thinking that were used by our malevolent conquerors and oppressors in creating them. And what was the cause? And what is the cause of our problems? From my perspective, and as I have mentioned before, the cause of our problems is the slavery economic system, also known as money, which is the root of all evil. If this is correct, then here again we must admit that money is not the answer to all our problems and challenges with our enemies. The system's blood money cannot compensate for all the wrongs, the evils that have been done to our ancestors, and by extension all the wrongs and evils that are being done to us, their offspring, today at the hands of our oppressors and their heirs and successors. For this, we must agree that taking the system's blood money, also known as the system's curse money, for all the evils that have been done to our most honorable African ancestors would be like spitting in their faces, dishonoring them to the max, and selling them out once again to their oppressors and slave masters, just like what their slave masters did to them. We would become co-conspirators with our ancestors' enemies for the system's blood money. 4 of the most important questions that I, the Mystic Philosopher, would like to ask all those that are championing the call for reparations, especially reparations in the form of the system's blood money. And my questions are these. 1, with nothing else taken into consideration, could you honestly put a monetary value on each of our most honorable African ancestors' life? 2, if yes, you can, what is the monetary value of just one of our ancestors' life that you can come up with, or that you came up with? 3, if you can, and if you do, how are you any different from our ancestors' malevolent slave masters, slave traders, and their collaborators from among us, the black ones from among us, African people, that helped in facilitating, in the capturing, and the evil transactions of our ancestors? And how are you any different from the heirs and successors of our ancestors' oppressors that are ruling, oppressing, and exterminating us today? 4, if we can, or if we will agree that what they did to our ancestors were beyond despicable and beyond evil, then how and why are we expecting to be rewarded by the devils and with their money, the root of all evil? And thus our most honorable ancestors are hereby saying to us all, their offspring and ascendants today, for if you accept the system's blood money, you will stand in the way of true justice, true spiritual justice. You will stand in the way of us, of your source, putting curses on the perpetrators. For if you accept the system's blood money, you will stand in the way of our source, true spiritual judgment, by putting a black mark and condemning these evildoers. For if you accept the system's blood money, you will stand in the way of our source, spiritual revenge upon these devils, black marking their seeds, heirs, and successors. And just for your information, and from my perspective, revenge is not necessarily a bad thing. And here is my reason for saying this. So revenge, by meaning and definition, is, and I quote, the action of inflicting hurt or harm on someone for an injury or wrong suffered at their hands. Or revenge is to inflict hurt or harm on someone for an injury or wrong done to someone else. And that someone else in this case would be our ancestors. Unquote. The evidence has shown, and the evidence will no doubt continue to show, that the only race or group of people on the planet today that is politically and religiously taught, indoctrinated, and encouraged not to think of revenge, not to look for revenge, not to pray for revenge, not to hope for revenge, for all the heinous crimes, injustices, and atrocities, for all the evils that have been done to us via our most honorable African ancestors, and for all the evils that are being done to us, their offspring and ascendants today, is us, melanin people, also known as Africans. And for your information, the system's blood money is not revenge. Receiving the system's blood money is not revenge. We have been taught and led to believe by the same race and races of people and the same God's saviors and prophets, etc., that enslaved and oppressed us via our ancestors and is enslaving us and oppressing us today. And I quote, "Dearly beloved, avenge not yourselves, but rather give place unto wrath, for it is written, revenge is mine, I will repay, saith the Lord." Unquote. Romans 12:19, King James Version. But what most of us don't know, and what our enslavers and oppressors, etc., don't want us to know, and won't tell us, is that this scripture or these words and this God are not for us African melanin people, but that it is and that they are for our oppressors. What most of us don't know, and what our enslavers and oppressors, etc., don't want us to know and won't tell us, is that this is the same people, the same Bible, the same scripture, and dear God, that said, and I quote, "Slaves, obey your earthly masters with deep respect and fear. Serve them sincerely as you would serve Christ." Ephesians 6 and verse 5. Therefore, for us to trust these people and their God is not wise. So, put the case in the hands of our honorable ancestors and let the killers and their system of force perish along with their blood money. So here the ancestors are saying to us that in order for us to get revenge, meaning in order for us to literally and spiritually see the action of hurt or harm inflicted on our malevolent enemies, for the injuries, the injustices, and the wrongs that we have suffered and are suffering at their wicked hands, and in order for us African people to literally and spiritually see hurt and harm on our enemies for the injustices, injuries, and wrongs that they have done to our ancestors are hereby saying to us that we must not and that we should not take things or take arms into our own physical hands and go make war and fight with our enemies, a fight that we know, and evidently we know that we would not win, could not win, and cannot win, but that we must put the case in the hands of our honorable ancestors and let the killers and their systems of force perish with their blood money. Please don't play into the hands of the system's force for the system's blood money. Because when they pay out their blood money, they are inflicting their curses and retribution to you and your family. The system's blood money, let me tell you, it won't make your lives any better. A good portion of it will be going right back to the system's lawyers, and what little remain will bring you heartaches, miseries, and upon your heads coals of fire. Money won't take away the pain and replace the loss of a murdered loved ones. So put the case in the hands of our honorable ancestors and let the killers and the systems of force perish with their blood money. And to the parents, I want you to hear this and take heed. Your children's lives are not your lottery ticket for winning the system's blood money. Your loved ones' lives are not for you to definitely, directly or indirectly sacrifice for the system's blood money. So be not deceived, for just like a fountain cannot bring forth fresh water and salt water at the same time, there is no good that can come from the system's evil. Don't stand in the way of our ancestors administration of spiritual justice and retribution on our enemies and their wicked seeds. And above all, you must never forgive.
and forget the predators and murderers and oppressors of your people. This is the end of this, my discourse for today, titled The System's Blood Money, all under the banner of redemption from the curse of the black spell. And I thank you very much for giving of your time to be watching or listening all the way to this end. I do hope that at the very least you did find this series or these thoughts provoking, if not at all informative. Your thoughts, your questions, and comments are welcome. In the meantime and between time, be more. I am the Mystic Philosopher. And I thank you. Now back to you, my brother, Kojo.
Yes, my brother. Thank you so much for that. Money won't take away the pain.
Not at all.
Money won't take away the pain. Ashe, my brother, I really appreciate you putting that down. I'm going to come away with so much from what you just shared, but that phrase is going to stick in my head forever. Money won't take away the pain. And that's applicable to so many other situations. And it's true in all situations. It's just that we have to be mature enough and get to that point in life to realize that money doesn't take away the sting of that pain. I just want to express my appreciation for you, brother. Thank you so much. We're going to run a marathon of shows all the way from now till 12 noon tomorrow. We have to work the agents hard and see who's who. But I'm looking forward to speaking with you again, brother. This platform is your platform, and we're going to make sure that you always have a way to get that word out because it's from a divine place. And I thank you so much.
Thanks, bro. Ashe, my brother.
Ashe, my brother. Yes.
Of our honorable ancestors, and let the killers and their systems of force perish with their blood money.